and guests invited to an Iftar party hosted by the Indian High Commission in Islamabad were aggressively turned away by Pakistani officials on Saturday evening. And Pakistani officials surrounded the Hotel Serena, the venue of that party, and forced hundreds of guests to turn back. Now, India has lodged a very strong protest with Pakistan, calling this unprecedented harassment, and said that they're they violate the basic norms of diplomatic conduct and civilized behavior, and they're counterproductive for our bilateral relations. Well, we're joined on this face-off by Imtiaz Gul, senior journalist from Pakistan, and C. Uday Bhaskar, Director, Society for Policy Studies, is with us also. Imtiaz Gul, to you first, a very strong statement now from India to Pakistan. But in your opinion, how would you describe the events at this Iftar party, and were they justified?
Well, I think it takes two to tango. And unfortunately, the guests invited by the Pakistan High Commissioner in New Delhi also faced a similar situation just a couple of days before. And I think I gather that only about 25 people out of the invited 175 could make it to the Pakistan High Commission. Now, if something like this happens in a functional democracy, the largest democracy of the world, which has just completed its election cycle very successfully, I think everybody is very proud of it. But if such democracy stoops to this level, then obviously a country which is embattled, which is facing so many crises at the moment, will indulge in this tit for tat. And
So see, Uday Bhaskar, Imtiaz Gul talks about this as tit for tat and in response or retaliation to things that have happened in India. Are we now seeing India-Pakistan ties at such a nadir that, this sort of thing is acceptable behavior? Guests are turned away from an Iftar party?
Yeah, if we look at the sequence of events over the last few days, I would say that this is definitely a deplorable low, a nadir as you described it in the bilateral relationship, because there is a certain symbolism about the Iftar party itself, the one hosted by Mr. Bisaria, the Indian High Commissioner in Islamabad. And if the Pakistani authorities were so determined that such an event was not to be held, I would have thought that they could have conveyed this to the Indian High Commission in advance, so that this kind of a shabby treatment of the guests could have been avoided. Now, Mr. Gul's reference saying that there is a tit-for-tat pattern, yes, if you look at the India-Pak over the last decade plus, particularly after Kargil, I think there has been a very, very sad sequence wherein accepted diplomatic protocols have not been respected. And you will recall, Ankita, we had a case where the electricity to the Indian High Commission was cut. Now, this kind of harassment is not, shall we say, within the framework of accepted diplomatic behavior. And I think this is something to be avoided. One hopes that both sides would be able to at least agree upon a set of protocols. And this is the old adage in diplomacy that you may not like each other, but you must learn how to respect the protocols in terms of the engagement, especially when there is diplomatic staff posted in either country. Ankita?
All right. Imtiaz Gul, very quickly respond to that. If there is to be any kind of diplomatic engagement at all, surely there has to be a way out of this which is more positive than the events of the last few days.
Well, I think the leadership shall have to come out of this college level student mentality and act as statesmen. I myself faced that situation yesterday. I had to return from Serena, but I think in this particular case, the onus rests with Indian authorities who created this situation in Delhi.
Mr. Gul, who was it who turned you away, though?
Sorry?
Who was it who turned you away?
Well, it was police. I mean, obviously, because it was a state response, so everybody was involved. I mean, we really don't have to guess about it. It's very obvious that then all institutions basically act in unison. And as far as the respect for diplomatic norms, I think it applies to both. Both should respect, and I think we should have avoided this situation. Last August, I think the same thing happened at the Pakistan High Commission when the Kashmiri leaders wanted to participate. So I think it takes two to tango. You can't really create a scene and a situation.
Ankita, this is not comparable. If I could just interject
Yes,
for a moment.
yes, very quickly. I'm completely out of time. Why is it not comparable, Siyoda Bhaskar?
You will agree that these two are not comparable. The reference to the Kashmiri separatist meeting and what happened
forget
at
about
Mr.
that, but
Musaviya's
actually the two
I am
situations,
only
two Iftar
suggesting
parties
are not comparable. That's the
comparable.
only point.
Okay.